Chapter 1, The Playfulness of God and the Poison of Religion. This episode takes place a week or so after Jesus saunters out of the tomb he borrowed. The Apostle John, one of Jesus' most intimate friends, recounts it like this. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord!" And as soon as Peter heard him say that, he wrapped his garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. So many things are delicious about this story, it's hard to know where to dive in. First, the boys have gone fishing. Can you blame them? The events of the past week have been, to say the least, overwhelming. The emotional high of the triumphal entry, palm branches waving, crowds shouting Hosanna, it all crashed lower than anyone thought possible. Their beloved Jesus was tortured, executed, entombed. But then, fantastic beyond imagining, he appeared to them again, alive, twice, though at this moment, they're not sure where he's gone off to. Not really sure what to do next, unable to endure one more agonizing moment waiting around the house, they do what any self-respecting angler who needs to get out and clear his head does. They go fishing. Apparently, fishing naked, or darn close to it. Notice that Peter had to put his clothes back on. Okay, now notice how casually Jesus enters the scene. His best friends don't even know it's him. This is the resurrected Lord, mind you, okay? Ruler of the heavens and the earth. Think Mount of Transfiguration. Jesus could have announced his risen presence on the beach with radiant glory. He knows there is nothing in the world that would help his mates more than to see him again. He certainly could have shouted in his commanding way, "It is I, the Lord, come thou unto me." He doesn't. He does the opposite. He hides himself a little bit longer to let this play out. He simply stands on the shore, hands in his pocket like a tourist, and asks the question curious passers-by always do of fishermen, "Catch anything?" The nonchalance of the risen Christ here is absolutely intriguing. Whatever Jesus is up to, the moment is loaded for his next move. Now, 2 more things are needed to set the stage properly. First, what would you guess Jesus' mood is this particular morning? Surely he must be happy. The man has conquered death, ransomed mankind, been restored to his Father, his friends, and the world he made forever. He is in the afterglow of the greatest triumph, of the greatest battle in the history of the cosmos. I'm going to venture that he is one mighty happy man, okay? But not the fellas. They've been up all night, nothing to show for it, bleary, half dead at the oars while the boat rocks back and forth. They could use some cheering up. Lastly, how did these, his closest brothers, first meet Jesus? It was right here, along the shore of this very lake, possibly this very spot, knowing how fishermen like to keep their boat near their favorite hole, right? That first compelling encounter also involved the fellow skunked after a night of fishing. It too began with a seemingly random instruction. Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything and followed him. So, here the famous disciples are 3 years later. They've pulled another all-nighter off that same beach. The boys are skunked again, and Jesus does it again. Try the other side. Again the nets are bursting. It's how he lets them know it's him. This has all the wink of an inside joke. Do you see the playfulness of Jesus? His timing, the tension, his hiddenness, a tourist-like question, the same lame suggestion from somebody they think knows nothing about fishing, and then bang, the catch. And the boys are hooked again. This is a beautiful story, made so much richer because of the playfulness of Jesus. Any way you look at it, it's a beautiful story. Playful, funny, so human, so hopeful, so unreligious. And it is that particular quality that gives the passage its true character and gives us an essential for knowing Jesus as he is. The man is not religious. If he were, the story would have taken place in a religious setting, the temple, right? Or at least a synagogue, and Jesus would have gathered them for a Bible study or a prayer meeting. Jesus doesn't even show up at the temple after his resurrection. He's at the beach, catching his boys fishing, filling their empty nets, and then having them to breakfast. And now we come to the poison of religion. Jesus healed a man on a Sabbath. That pushed his enemies over the top. They decided to kill him. The account takes place early in the Gospel of Mark. Another time he went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with a shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone. Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. And then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Really? Because he healed a man on the Sabbath. What do we have here? After all the nonsense that is repeated about Jesus being a gentle peacemaker, reading the Gospels is really quite a shock. We discover a Jesus who is in fact frequently embroiled in conflict, most of which he provokes himself, like healing on the Sabbath. And every single one of those conflicts is with very religious people. Not one hostile encounter involves a pagan, not at least until the Roman troopers get a hold of him, but it was the religious establishment that handed Jesus over to them. If you were reading the Gospels without bias or assumption, you would have no trouble whatsoever coming to believe that religion is the enemy or in the hands of the enemy. Jesus' opponents are all people we would consider to be highly invested in doing religion right. They certainly considered themselves to be so. You will want to keep this in mind if you would know Jesus really. For to come to know Jesus intimately, as he is, as he wants to be known, is to release a redemptive landslide in your life. There will be no stopping the goodness. The first purpose of your existence will be resolved, and from there you are set to fulfill all of God's other purposes for you. Now, do you really think that the enemy of our souls, the arch enemy of Jesus Christ, is simply going to let that happen? Satan is far too subtle to rely on persecution alone. His most masterful works are works of deception. Ask Adam and Eve about this when you see them. So the deceiver deceives by means of distortion, and his favorite tool is to present a distorted Christ. Not so blatant as a bad fish, but through the respectable channels of religion. Consider this one piece of evidence. Millions of people who have spent years in church, and yet they don't know Jesus personally. Their heads are filled with stuffing about Jesus, but they do not experience him, not like the boys did on the beach. There are millions more who love Jesus Christ, but experience him only occasionally, more often stumbling along short of the life he promised, like Lazarus, still wrapped in his grave clothes. Can anything be more diabolical? Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath. His enemies decided to kill him. Do you really think that's over? Why would that have ended with the time of Christ? I mean, really now, it would be just a little arrogant for us to assume that we could not fall under the same religious haze. And thus, George MacDonald, that old Scottish prophet, asks, how have we learned Christ? It ought to be a startling thought that we may have learned him wrong. It is a startling thought. That must be far worse than not to have learned him at all. His place is occupied by a false Christ, hard to exercise. Hard to exercise indeed, because religion gives the impression of having Christ while it inoculates you from experiencing the real thing. Most wicked. If you want to ruin an economy, flood the market with counterfeit bills.